Dementia, it's a word that carries so much weight, right? And honestly, a lot of confusion. But what if we could actually cut through all that noise? What if there was a clear, evidence-based path from just understanding the risk to actually building resilience? Well, that's exactly what we're going to do. So let's dive right in.
I bet you've seen headlines like this one popping up. For decades, it felt like the story of Alzheimer's was all about a single bad guy, a single culprit. Well, that whole story, it's gotten way more complicated. And you know what? That's actually great news for all of us.
So, for the longest time, the entire field was basically obsessed with this one idea, the amyloid hypothesis. And the idea was pretty simple and really compelling. These sticky plaques made of a protein called amyloid beta, they build up in the brain, they kill off your neurons, and boom, that's what causes dementia. It was the prime suspect for years.
But then, things got messy. Drug trials that were designed to clear out these plaques just kept failing, one after another. And then, in 2022, you had these bombshell allegations of fraud in a really important foundational research paper that just rocked the whole scientific community. It left so many people asking, okay, if the main theory is shaky, what on earth are we supposed to believe now?
All right, so here's what we're going to cover as we decode this whole new chapter. We'll start with dementia's shifting story. Then we'll decode your actual risk factors. From there, we'll talk about building a resilient brain, learn how to separate real hope from the hype, and finally, take a look at the very exciting future of brain health.
Okay, let's kick things off with what I think is the most empowering part of this whole new story. See, the old view felt so final, so deterministic, but the new science is showing us that our brain's future is far from being set in stone. Turns out, it's not all about the genetic lottery you were handed.
All right, I just want you to sit with this number for a second. 40%. It's a figure that completely changes the conversation we're having about dementia.
So, the big question is, 40% of what exactly?
Well, get this. According to a huge, landmark report from the Lancet Commission, a staggering 40% of dementia cases around the world could potentially be prevented, or at least delayed, just by addressing 12 things that we can actually change. And this chart? It breaks down some of the biggest culprits, like hearing loss, education, and smoking. I mean, think about that. That is not a small slice of the pie. That is a massive window of opportunity.
And what's really cool is how this is broken down across our entire lives. It shows that certain risk factors are more important at different stages. It's never too early, and it's never too late to start taking action. From focusing on education when you're young, to managing hearing and blood pressure in midlife, all the way to staying active and connected as you get older, every single stage is a chance to build a stronger, more resilient brain. Okay, so we've established that a huge chunk of our risk is in our control. So what do we do about it? Let's get into the concrete, daily actions we can take to really build up our brain's defenses against cognitive decline.
All right, first up, food. I'm sure you've heard all about the Mediterranean diet. Well, researchers created a kind of hybrid diet called the MIND diet. It's kind of like the Mediterranean diet, but with a supercharged focus on specific brain-boosting foods, like leafy greens and berries. And there was one 5-year study that found that, while both diets are fantastic, the MIND diet seemed to have a slight edge when it came to protecting the brain.
And look, it's not just about what's on your plate, right? The evidence is piling up for a whole suite of habits. Things like staying physically active, always challenging your brain by learning new things, keeping that blood pressure in check, using hearing aids if you need them, and staying social. I love this analogy. Think of each of these habits as a daily deposit you're making into your brain's retirement account.
And this quote, this one from Professor Gil Livingston, who actually led that big Lancet report, it just hits the nail on the head. This isn't just wishful thinking anymore. This is about real, tangible power that we have, as individuals and as a society, to change the future of brain health for the better.
Okay, but here's the thing. Whenever there's hope, there's also hype. And with all this new focus on prevention, a whole industry of so-called cures and reversal programs has just exploded. And it can be really, really tough to know what's legit and what's just selling false hope.
So, this is super important. We have to be critical consumers of information. Respected groups like the Alzheimer Society of Canada are raising the alarm. They're saying very clearly that for some of these popular programs that claim they can reverse Alzheimer's, the claims they're making, they just aren't backed by the kind of solid, peer-reviewed science you'd want to see.
So, how do you spot the hype? How do you protect yourself? Well, the Alzheimer Society points to 3 major red flags. First,
watch out for the price tag. Programs that cost thousands of dollars for stuff that isn't covered by your regular health plan. Second, a serious lack of real evidence. If they're relying on anecdotes instead of big, solid studies, be wary. And third, check credentials. Some of these experts may not have any regulated medical background at all.
Okay, so if we're supposed to be skeptical of all that hype, where is the real hope? Well, it's in the future of brain health, which is honestly way more exciting. We're moving away from a simplistic one cause, one cure model to something that's way more nuanced and holistic.
You know, researchers are now talking about the ecology of the brain. I love that. Instead of hunting for one single villain like amyloid, they're seeing dementia as the result of lots of different systems going haywire over time. Things like inflammation, metabolism, and the health of our blood vessels. It's not about finding one magic bullet anymore. It's about supporting the entire complex ecosystem up there.
And get this, as our understanding evolves, so do the tools we use to measure risk. The old ways of calculating risk, they were like taking a single snapshot, kind of blurry, focused on just a few things. But the new stuff? It's like switching to a 4K movie. They look at everything, genetics, lifestyle, environment, physical function, to give us a much clearer, more predictive picture of our brain's future.
And the future of just detecting this stuff? It's incredible. There's groundbreaking research coming out of UC Irvine, and they're finding that it's not just about the brain shrinking. They're finding that tiny, subtle shifts in the actual shape of the brain are a huge predictor of cognitive decline. Think about that. We could get a warning sign years, maybe even decades, before a single symptom shows up.
So, at the end of the day, if there's one thing I want you to take away from all this, it's this. The story of your brain has not been written yet. That old narrative of genetic destiny is being replaced by a new one, a story of opportunity and empowerment. The science is clear. A huge part of the risk is in our hands. So the real question is, what story are you going to write?